This is an introduction on Johari's window and receiving and giving feedback. So the Johari window is an interesting model to use when you think about self-awareness, what you know about yourself, when you think about social awareness, what you know about other people. So the model is actually a 2x2 model, and you'll see on the left side you have information that's known to others in the first row, and then you have information that's not known to others in the second row. And then across the top of the model, you have information that's known to you, that's known to the self in the first column, and information that's not known to you or to yourself in the second column. So when you put these together in the upper left-hand corner, what you have in that box is information that's known to the self and known to others. And in the Johari window model, they refer to that as open, because that's information that everybody knows. Maybe you're good at managing projects. Maybe you're someone who interrupts people in meetings. Whatever it is, you know it and other people know it. It's open. So now let's go down to the square below this. And what we have is information that's known to the self, but not known to others. And that's information that's referred to as hidden. So it could be that I'm really good at Excel, but nobody in my department knows that I'm good at Excel. Or maybe it's my job to work with Excel, and I'm not very good at it. And I know that, but nobody else in my department knows that. So information that's in this hidden quadrant, you know about yourself, but other people don't know about you. Now moving to the upper right corner, here we have information that's not known to you, but that is known to other people. So we refer to that quadrant as the blind spot quadrant. So this could be, I don't realize that I interrupt people all the time in meetings, but everybody else knows that about me. Or I don't realize that I'm really good and calm in a crisis, but everybody else knows that about me. So this is where other people know it, but I don't know about myself. And then finally, we move into the last quadrant, where this is information that's not known to the self and it's not known to other people. So we refer to this quadrant as unknown. And typically, the information in this quadrant does not become known until some sort of circumstance happens. So maybe I don't know that I'm good at leading project teams. Nobody else knows that I'm any good at leading project teams. But guess what? Now I have to lead a project team. So at this point, we all find out whether I'm good or not at doing that. So one of the benefits of Johari's window is it lets you think about the fact that the world is constructed of information that we know, information that other people know, and then various combinations of that. Ideally, what you would like in a work environment is as much of the information to be open as possible. That you know your strengths and weaknesses and opportunities, and other people know your strengths and weaknesses and opportunities, and vice versa for everybody in your team. Part of what we talked about in the assignment this week is that we benefit by getting feedback from each other. And of course, the box that refers to or that benefits from feedback is the blind spot box. So if there's information that's not known to me, but that is known to others, there's an opportunity for them to provide feedback to me. Once someone provides feedback to me, then that moves into the open box, because now I know it too. So before we talk about receiving feedback, just a little piece of Johari window trivia. The Johari window was created in the late 1960s by Joseph Luft and Harry Ingram, and that's actually where the name comes from. So Johari is a combination of Joseph and Harry. That's how they came up with that name. All right, so let's move on to receiving feedback. I have a friend who says that getting feedback is a gift, but we don't always like all the gifts that we're given. So sometimes you're going to get feedback that you're grateful to get, and other times you're going to get feedback that maybe you're not quite so happy with. But regardless, receiving feedback really is a wonderful opportunity. So here's a couple of things to keep in mind when you are receiving feedback. First of all, when people are giving you feedback, Listen to the feedback. Don't rebut it. Don't agree with it. Don't disagree with it. Don't prove it. Don't disprove it. Just listen to their feedback. Let them give you the feedback in the way that they want to give you the feedback. Don't get defensive. Once someone is willing to give you feedback, nothing shuts that down faster than you not being gracious about receiving that feedback. You don't have to agree with it, but you need to be not defensive. You need to stay open to the feedback so that the person feels okay about having given you that feedback. Next, you might want to consider asking for clarification or examples. And the purpose of asking for clarification and examples is not to prove that they're not right, but rather to help you more fully understand what it is that they're saying to you in terms of feedback. Don't get defensive twice. I didn't mean to keep that in the list again, but it's probably worth putting in the list twice. There's nothing that shuts people down faster than when they give someone feedback and that person is defensive. Next, you want to thank people for the feedback. It takes time, it takes energy, it takes consideration, it might take courage in order to give you feedback. So you want to make sure that you thank them for that feedback and let them know that you appreciate that they shared it with you, or whatever you can genuinely say to them. Next, take the time to consider the feedback. Even if it's feedback that at first blush you think that you disagree with, think about it, ponder on it. Even if you disagree with it, there might be a little kernel of something there that would be useful for you. So you are not obligated to act on feedback, but you are obligated to consider it and see if there's something that you can learn from it. And then finally, consider closing the loop with the person that gave you the feedback. This could be as simple, in a day or a week, to say, you know what, I've really been thinking about what you said to me and I want you to know I appreciate it. Or it could be, I've thought about it and here's something that I'm going to do differently based on that. So whatever you can authentically and genuinely say about the feedback that they gave you, close the loop so that they know that you considered it and that possibly you're taking action on it. So that's receiving feedback. Now let's talk about giving feedback. So when we think about giving effective feedback, there's really two things we need to think about. One is the quantity of the feedback that we're giving, and the other is the quality of the feedback that we're giving. So let's start with the quantity of feedback. So here's a continuum that's going to go on the left from poor performance all the way over to outstanding performance, and then let's put this line here that represents our expectation for someone's performance. So there's this whole potential continuum of performance, and then you see the vertical line where we think people should be performing. So the question is, where do we tend to give feedback? And the answer is that most of us give feedback here. We give feedback when people are not doing as well as we expect, and then we give feedback way over here on the right when they hit it so far out of the park that we can't help but give them positive feedback. But what you'll notice is that there is a piece of this spectrum that is unaccounted for in terms of feedback. And what's unaccounted for is where people are doing what they're supposed to and when they're doing a little better than what they're supposed to, a little better than our expectations. It turns out that people need feedback all along this continuum. Yes, you need to give people feedback for doing what they're supposed to if you want them to perform in an optimal way. So feedback should be all along this continuum. Now, based on no research whatsoever, but just on my observations, having worked with a lot of leaders for the last 20 years, my observation is that many leaders do not give enough constructive feedback, do not give enough feedback on that left side of the continuum, and that practically nobody gives enough positive feedback, which is the feedback on the right side of that expectation line. Now, the research disagrees a little bit, but there is a rule of thumb as to how many positive and constructive feedback messages, what that ratio should be. And the ratio is either 7-to-1 positive to constructive or 9-to-1 positive to constructive. And I know many of you now are thinking, oh my gosh, before I say one constructive thing, I have to say 9 positive things? No, that's not how it works. But what that model says, that 7-to-1 or 9-to-1 ratio says, is that if you are giving people feedback on a regular and consistent basis, you will in fact be giving more positive feedback than you're giving constructive feedback. That even the worst performer that you have probably is doing more things right than they're doing wrong. Now, you want to keep your feedback proportional. You don't throw someone a parade for coming into work on time, but if it's important that they come into work on time, you give them feedback on that, and you let them know that that's what you expect and that they're doing what you expect. So that's the quantity of feedback. Now, the other challenge we have is with the quality of feedback that we give. A lot of us think that we're giving feedback and we're not really giving feedback. So it turns out there's a lot of feedback models in the world, and if you boil them all down to their essence, in order for something to be feedback, it really has to include 2 things. It has to describe specifically what the person did or didn't do, and it needs to describe the impact, why it matters that they did or didn't do that. So let me give you a couple of examples here. So first, I'm going to give you an example that is neither specific nor describes the impact. So I have it here on the screen so you can see it as well. So the feedback is, Susan, I appreciate what you did today. Thanks. So that's a nice sentiment, but that's not feedback because Susan doesn't know specifically what she did and she doesn't know why it mattered that she did something. So this is what is often referred to as good dog feedback, because it's where you say, I appreciate it, I thank you, you're awesome, you rock, you're wonderful, good dog, good dog. But it doesn't have the information that Susan needs in order to either change her behavior or to continue her behavior. So let's look at another example. So here's the second example. Susan, I was late to the meeting today and you got it started without me. I really appreciate it. Thanks. So in this case, the person who's giving the feedback did include the specific of what Susan did. So I was late to the meeting, Susan got it started without me. So Susan knows specifically what she did that I appreciate and that I'm thankful for. So that's better, but it's still not feedback, because in order for it to be feedback, it needs to have both the specific and describe the impact. So let's go ahead and look at one of those. So in this third piece of feedback, Susan, I was late to the meeting today. You got it started without me, which meant we could get everything done and still finish on time. I really appreciate it. Thanks. So this is feedback. And this is feedback because Susan knows what she did. I was late and she got the meeting started without me. And she knows why it matters. And she knows that I know why it matters that she did that. It matters in this case because we could get everything done and still finish on time. So sometimes when I talk to people about giving more feedback and giving higher quality feedback, they say they don't have time to give feedback. But think about how long it takes to say that third message. Susan, I was late to the meeting today. You got it started without me, which meant we could get everything done and still finish on time. I appreciate it. Thanks. What is that? 5 seconds? 8 seconds? It's not very long, but it includes the information that Susan needs in order to continue to be a good performer and in order to change her behavior, if that's what's needed, to be a better performer. All of those things are going to help her perform well. She's going to know that I'm someone who is concerned with improving her performance, and that is why feedback is so wonderful.